Got ready?
Yeah.
Who was this brash writer-producer who would deceive the network and challenge their perceptions of quality television?
I was a freelance writer who got tired of writing scripts about nothing at all, and I began reading science fiction. And among the science fiction I read was about the Lilliputians, and I began to see from that you could write about something in science fiction. And so I dreamed up the Star Trek idea so that I could comment on man and society. There is a tomorrow. It's not all going to be over with a big flash and a bomb. The human race is improving. We have things to be proud of, and Star Trek is about those things.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise.
Your ongoing mission to explore strange new worlds.
To seek out new life and new civilizations. To boldly go
where no man has gone before.
The scene is the bridge of the USS United States Spaceship Enterprise. Captain Kirk is at his command position, his lovely but highly efficient female yeoman at his side. Suddenly, without provocation, our starship is attacked by an alien space vessel. We try to warn the alien vessel off, but it ignores us and begins loosening bolts of photon energy plasma at us. The alien vessel's attack begins to weaken our deflectors. Mr. Spock reports to Captain Kirk that the next enemy bolt will probably break through and destroy the Enterprise. At this moment, we look up to see that final energy plasma bolt heading for us. There may be only 4 or 5 seconds of life left. Kirk puts his arms about his lovely female yeoman, comforting and embracing her as they wait for what seems certain death. Fade out, and teaser.
Please check 1. Inaccurate terminology. The Enterprise is more correctly an international vessel, the United Spaceship Enterprise. Scientifically incorrect. Energy plasma bolts could not be photon in nature. Unbelievable. The captain would not hug pretty yeoman on the bridge of his vessel. Concept weak. This whole story opening reeks too much of space pirate, or similar bad science fiction. No, we're not joking. The preceding page was very real and important test of your approach to science fiction. Here's why. Inaccurate terminology. Wrong. If you check this one. Sure, the term United States Spaceship was incorrect, but it could have been fixed with a pencil slash. Although we do want directors, writers, actors, and others to use proper terminology, this error was certainly far from being the major Star Trek format error. Scientifically inaccurate. Wrong again. Beware if you've checked this one. Although we do want to be scientifically accurate, we found that the selection of this item usually indicates a preoccupation with science and gadgetry over people and story. Concept weak. Wrong again. It is in fact much like the opening of one of our best episodes of last year. Aliens, enemy vessels, sudden attack, and such things can range from Buck Rogers to classical literature, all depending on how it is handled. Witness H.G. Wells' novels, Forrester's Sea Stories, and so on. Understanding the right answer to this is basic to understanding the Star Trek format. This was the correct answer. Unbelievable. Why the correct answer? Simply because we've learned during a full season of making visual science fiction that believability of characters, their actions and reactions, is our greatest need and is the most important angle factor. Let's explore that briefly on the next page. Now try again. Same basic story situation, but against another background. The time is today. We're in Vietnam waters aboard the Navy cruiser USS Detroit. Suddenly, an enemy gunboat heads for us. Our guns are unable to stop it, and we realize it's a suicide attack with an atomic warhead. Total destruction of our vessel and of all aboard appears probable. Would Captain E.L. Henderson, presently commanding the USS Detroit, turn and hug a comely female wave who happened to be on the ship's bridge? As simple as that. This is our standard test that has led to Star Trek believability. It also suggests much of what has been wrong in filmed science fiction of the past. No, Captain Henderson wouldn't, not if he's the kind of captain we hope is commanding any naval vessel of ours. Nor would Captain Kirk hug a female crewman in a moment of danger, not if he's to remain believable. Some might prefer Henderson were somewhere making love rather than shelling Asiatic ports, but that's a whole different story for a whole different network, probably BBC. And so, in every scene of our Star Trek story, translate it into a real-life situation, or, sometimes as useful, try it in your mind as a scene in Gunsmoke, Naked City, or some similar show. Would you believe the people and the scene if it happened there? If you're one of those who answers, the character acts that way because it's science fiction, don't call us. We'll call you. The Star Trek format. Captain, Jim Kirk. A first officer, Mr. Spock. A group of regulars who make up our television family, Dr. McCoy, Scotty, Uhura, Sulu, Nurse Christine, and others as detailed later. Guest stars, if the story demands it, but with a story which also emphasizes our series leads. On a giant starship, a familiar television home base, the USS Enterprise. On patrol of a section of our galaxy, our vessel representing Earth and the Federation, assisting colonists, aiding in scientific exploration, putting down conflicts, helping those in distress,
Captain. Standing by to beam your survivors aboard our ship.
regulating trade, engaging in diplomatic missions, and so on. Yes, the Star Trek format is actually that simple. If you're a TV professional, you already know the following 7 rules. Build your episode on an action-adventure framework. We must reach out, hold, and entertain a mass audience of some 20 million people, or we simply don't stay on the air. Tell your story about people, not about science and gadgetry. Joe Friday doesn't stop to think about the mechanics of his .38 before he uses it. Kildare never did a monologue about the theory of anesthetics. Matt Dillon never identifies and discusses the breed of his horse before he rides off on it. Keep in mind that science fiction is not a separate field of literature with rules of its own, but indeed needs the same ingredients as any story, including a jeopardy of some type to someone we learn to care about. Climactic build, sound motivation, you know the list. Then, with that firm foundation established, interweave in it any statement to be made about man, society, and so on.
We carry many such words as this from many lands, many worlds. Many are equally good and are as well respected. But wherever we have gone, no words have said this thing of importance in quite this way.
Yes, we want you to have something to say, but say it entertainingly as you do on any other show. We don't need essays, however brilliant. Remember always that Star Trek is never fantasy. Whatever happens, no matter how unusual or bizarre, must have some basis in either fact or theory. And stay true to the premise. Don't give the enemy starflight capability, and then have them engage our vessel with grappling hooks and drawn swords. Don't try to tell a story about whole civilizations. We've never yet been able to get a usable story from a writer who began, "I see the strange civilization, which..." Stop worrying about not being a scientist. How many cowboys, police officers, and doctors wrote westerns, detective, and hospital shows? The Star Trek script format. The teaser. We open with action, always establishing a strong jeopardy, need, or other hook. It is not necessary to establish all the backstory in the teaser. Instead, we tantalize the audience with a promise of excitement to come. For example, it can be as simple as everyone tense on the bridge, hunting down a marauding enemy ship. Then a telltale blip is sighted on the screen, and the captain orders all hands to battle stations. Fade out. That's enough. The acts. 4 acts in length. Act 1 usually begins with Captain's voiceover, Captain Kirk dictating his log. Necessary backstory should be laid in here, not in the teaser. The captain's log should be succinct and crisp, in ship's commander log language. Opening Act 1, we need some form of orbit, establishing or other silent shot to give us time for both captain's log and opening credits.
Captain's log, star date 2947.3. We have been through a severe ion storm. 1 crewman is dead. Ship's damage is considerable. I have ordered a non-scheduled layover on Starbase 11 for repairs.
Kirk, you say you jettisoned the pod after the red alert?
You have my sworn deposition.
Then, Captain, I must presume you have committed willful perjury. This extract from your computer log says you jettisoned the pod before going to red alert. Consider yourself confined to the base. official inquiry will determine whether a general court-martial is in order.
We must have a strong ending to Act 2, something that will keep the audience tuned to our channel.
1/3 more thrust.
Working.
Ion pod.
Stand by to get out of there, Ben.
Aye, aye, sir.
Force 5, sir. Steady as she goes, Mr. Hansen.
Freeze that. The court will notice the log plainly shows the defendant's finger pressing the jettison button. The condition signal reads yellow alert, not red alert, but simply yellow alert. When the pod containing Lieutenant Commander Finney was jettisoned, the emergency did not as yet exist.
But that's not the way it happened.
Style. We maintain a fast pace, avoid long philosophical exchanges or tedious explanations of equipment.
Sensor reading, Captain. Some sort of equipment functioning on that vessel.
All decks go to full alert.
And note that our cutting technique is to use the shortest possible time between idea and execution of it. Like, for instance, Kirk decides that a landing party will transport down to a planet. Hard cut to lights blinking on the transporter console. Pull back to reveal the landing party stepping into the transporter.
We'll beam down. Alert security. Prepare to transport landing party to surface. We'll land in the vicinity of the distress signals now being received.
Page count. First drafts can run up to 70 pages, if you intend to trim and tighten later. But for final polished draft, absolutely no more than 65 pages, please. Another please. Cast and set lists with your draft. Thank you. The USS Enterprise. The vessel. The USS Enterprise is a spaceship, official designation Starship class, somewhat larger than a present-day naval cruiser. It is the largest and most modern type vessel in the Starfleet service. It has a crew of 430 persons, approximately 1/3 of them female. The purpose of the USS Enterprise is to give our audience a home base, a familiar and comfortable counterpoint to the bizarre and unusual things and places we see during our episodes. Where possible, we try to emphasize and play to the size, complexity, and varied functions of the Enterprise. This does not mean you must always use the Enterprise or start every story there. The saucer section of the vessel, at the top of which is our command bridge, is 11 decks thick at the middle. The engineering section, to which the 2 engine nacelles are attached, is equally large and complex. Contains at the rear a hangar deck large enough to hangar a whole fleet of today's jetliners. Turbo elevators, which can run both vertically and horizontally, interconnect every deck and compartment of this huge vessel. Included in addition to our bridge, sickbay, captain's cabin, and other familiar standing sets are the widest possible variety of labs and technical departments, computer rooms, storage facilities, passenger accommodations, and cargo facilities. The crew. International in origin, completely multiracial. But even in this future century, we will see some traditional trappings, ornaments, and styles that suggest the Asiatic, the Arabic, the Latin, etc. So far, Mr. Spock has been our only crewman with bloodlines from another planet. However, it is not impossible that we might discover some other aliens or part aliens working aboard our starship. We like our ways of using the crewmen, extras as well as actors, to help suggest the enormous diversity of our vessel. For example, playing a scene in leisure attire as our people pass in sports gear, obviously going to or coming from a gymnasium or such. Life aboard the Enterprise, believably again, as in a present-day naval cruiser, is not all hard work and stern devotion to duty. The Enterprise engines, the 2 outboard nacelles, use matter and antimatter for propulsion, the annihilation of dual matter creating the fantastic power required to warp space and exceed the speed of light.
Intermix set bridge. Impulse power at your discretion.
Impulse power, Mr. Sulu.
The Enterprise has a secondary propulsion system. These are impulse power engines, same principle as rocket power. located at the rear of the saucer section. Vessel speed, when using the impulse engine, is of course less than the speed of light. In case of total failure of all engine power sources, the vessel's gravitational and life support systems can be switched to battery power, with a full load capacity of about 1 week. Hyperlight speeds, or space warp speeds, the latter is the terminology we prefer, are measured in warp factors. Warp factor 1 is the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, or somewhat over 600 million miles per hour. Note, warp factors 2, 3, and 4, and so on, are based upon a geometrical formula of light velocity. Warp factor 2 is actually 8 times the speed of light. Warp factor 3 is 24 times the speed of light. Warp factor 4 is 64 times the speed of light, and so on. Maximum safe speed is warp 6. At warp 8, the vessel begins to show considerable strain.
Speed, warp factor 8.
We have established in preceding episodes that warp 7 or 8 are used only in emergencies, in hot pursuit and so on, and can be highly dangerous.
Warp factor 8. Aye, aye, sir.
Fire. Phasers, fire.
The main weaponry of the USS Enterprise is its banks of ship's phasers, which are artillery-sized versions of the hand phaser and phaser pistol. From the bridge, phaser power can be aimed in any direction, and our optical effect here is blips, or squirts of blue phaser fire, which are emitted from the top or bottom of the saucer section of the vessel. These can act directly against target very much as hand phaser fire, but on a much larger scale. Phaser fire can also be set for proximity explosion and act somewhat like depth charges.
Phaser weapons energized. Set for proximity blast.
Now, fire blind, lay down a pattern.
Driver's pattern. All phasers fire.
Phaser 1.
Fire. Phaser 1, fire.
The helmsman, Mr. Sulu, acts as a weapons officer. Under the captain's direction, he coordinates the fire from the phaser rooms, using the vessel's navigational aids to lock the phasers on target, and, on the captain's order, engages the circuits which fire these weapons.